The senator from the great state of Texas, Senator Ted Cruz. How are you, Ted?
Glenn, my friend, always great to be with you.
Thank you. First, your comments on the articles of impeachment, abuse of power and obstruction of Congress.
Well, you know, it reminds me a little bit of Sherlock Holmes' famous dog that didn't bark, which is I think these articles of impeachment represent an admission of failure on the part of the Democrats.
I think so, too.
Just 2-3 weeks ago, you may remember that every Democrat in Washington was using the word bribery. They were saying bribery over and over and over again. And the reason for that, the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee had focus grouped it. They'd done focus grouped and polled it, and they discovered that bribery was really bad. And when they said bribery, people reacted understandably badly and said, "Oh, I don't like bribery." And so in a 24-hour period, just about every Democrat in the House began saying bribery, bribery, bribery. Here's the problem. They don't have evidence of bribery. They don't have evidence of criminal conduct. And as the hearings went on, they brought in one witness after another, and they couldn't prove what they were alleging, in significant part because the president released the transcript of the phone call on the face of it, and there's nothing illegal or criminal in it. And it came to really a really revealing moment this weekend when the House Democrats put out a 55-page memorandum in which they called it a scholarly memorandum, in which they argued that for impeachment you don't have to prove any criminal offense or even any law was violated. You don't even have to prove that the president had a speeding ticket. That instead they said you could just impeach for amorphous abuse of power, which is what they just did a few minutes ago. What that reveals, you know, as you know, poker, Glenn.
Yeah.
In the game of poker, if someone has a tell, it's when they have a really bad hand and they reveal it. They twist their ring or they pull on their hair. Or they do something to reveal, I got a terrible hand. The Democrats have a tell. They're revealing that they haven't been able to prove any of what they said they were going to prove, but they're going to impeach the president anyway because they hate him. This is a partisan exercise, and it's been nothing but a partisan show trial for months. But the good news is once the House is done with it, the Senate's going to take it up, and this is going to be thrown out. This is going nowhere, and every Democrat who is voting to impeach knows that this has 0% chance of succeeding in the Senate.
So here's the thing that I wanted to talk to you about, because you did a great job on Meet the Press, and they just would not let you speak, and they mocked you for it. And this is what I hope we do find out in the Senate. I know Grassley, Johnson, and Graham are starting to put together witness lists that they want to dig into the Ukrainian scandal. And the first person they want to bring on is Chalupa, the DNC operative. The other one is Andrei Teleshenko, who I've had on this program before, who tells a very different story. Can you explain why the media should not be laughing at the claim that the Democrats were using Ukraine to interfere in this election?
Well, sure, and the simplest answer why the media shouldn't be laughing is that it's a fact and they're supposed to be journalists. But they're not journalists anymore. Most of the media, they are propagandists. They don't pretend to be fair and objective. And the reason they're laughing, the reason they're mocking and attacking any claim about Ukraine is they're terrified. You know, on Sunday when I did Meet the Press, I've done Meet the Press a lot of times. Chuck Todd knows how to be a real journalist. He's capable of asking questions that are real questions. I've never seen Chuck Todd panic as much as he did on Sunday. And all of the media is panicking because they see the Democrats' case collapsing, and they're running like rats from a ship. So here's the game the media has played, is they, for the past several weeks, they try to pose to anyone in Republican politicians or anyone else. Are you saying that Ukraine and not Russia interfered in 2016? They try to pose it as a binary test so that anyone who says, well, yes, aha, you're a fool, you're denying the Russian interference. Well, look, that's utter nonsense. Let me say unequivocally, yes, Russia interfered in our 2016 election. Russia is not our friend. Vladimir Putin is a KGB thug, which, by the way, the Democrats and the media were apologists for during the entire Obama administration. Mm-hmm. They've suddenly discovered Russia are bad guys. I'm glad they did so after about 70 years of kissing up to the Soviet Union and Russia. But the fact that Russia interfered in our election does not mean that nobody else on earth did also. We know for a fact a number of other countries have actively interfered in our elections, including China, including North Korea, and including Ukraine. And the simple facts, so in 2016, in the fall of 2016, the sitting ambassador from Ukraine authored an op-ed published in The Hill blasting Donald Trump. The Ukrainian embassy pushed that out on their official website. That is very, very unusual for a sitting ambassador to try to inject themselves into the middle of an American presidential campaign. Not only that, publicly, the sitting interior minister of the Ukrainian government was blasting Donald Trump. The former prime minister of Ukraine was blasting Donald Trump. Two parliamentarians in Ukraine held a press conference where they accused their government of illegally trying to influence the U.S. election to help elect Hillary Clinton. Those are all facts. And as you note, a Democratic operative who worked for the DNC was meeting repeatedly with the Ukrainians, and it is at least alleged was coordinating closely with Democrats and Hillary Clinton to attack Donald Trump.
You also have a court case in Ukraine. The guy who was the head of the Anti-Corruption Bureau, which was partly funded by George Soros and put together by our own administration, Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, and running through our Justice Department. You have the head guy of that on tape saying that, yeah, I was working to help Hillary Clinton win the election. He and another guy were both nailed and found guilty of interfering with the U.S. election. They say that this was overturned. It wasn't overturned. They just couldn't give them a sentence because in Ukraine you can't go after a sitting parliamentarian. And so they both walked away, but it was not overturned, and we have it on tape.
Yep. And you know what, Glenn? The media knows all of this. I mean, it was in January 2017, Politico wrote a long expose about Ukraine interfering in the election. The reporter's now a reporter at the New York Times. CBS wrote about it. The Economist wrote about it. The Financial Times wrote about it. All of the media know this, and back when they were just trying to report news, of course they'd report it. Today, the reason they get so hysterical when you say it is because the Democrats' impeachment case is collapsing. And number one, Ukraine was interfering, trying to benefit Hillary Clinton, and all of the mainstream media wanted Hillary Clinton to win. So they agree with that interference. That's interference on their side. They're okay with that. But number two, they are desperately trying to preserve the narrative. I have to say, it has been hysterical to see the media screaming. So if you acknowledge the facts, and what you and I just said, there are simple facts, they scream that you're a Russian asset. And that was a quote from the Washington Post on Sunday where they called me a Russian asset. John Harwood, the reporter at CNBC, who even among mainstream media reporters is remarkably partisan. He was so bad he got NBC fired from hosting Republican debates in 2016 because he can't resist letting his partisan bias come out. He sent out on Twitter and said, well, now Cruz is just a mouthpiece for Russian propaganda.
No, that's ridiculous. This is ridiculous. I've been proudly against Russia, and I know you have been, at least in my case, since 1964. So please stop with this nonsense. Let me ask you this.
Well, in my office, there is a 15-foot wide painting of Ronald Reagan standing before the Brandenburg Gate and uttering the most important words of this last century, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. I mean, go back to the Obama-Mitt Romney debate.
I know.
Where Romney was rightly pointing out the dangers of Putin and Russia, and Obama looked at him and said, Mitt, the 1980s call, they want their foreign policy back. The Dems are apologists for Russia, but they've taken it on as convenient. And listen, the fact that they get so hysterical is
tells you something.
Revealing. It shows how scared they are. They don't have any evidence. And what they're going to do next week, which is vote to impeach, they decided they wanted to do in November of 2016. So it's unrelated to any facts. It's not related to evidence.
So Ted, I've got less than a minute here with you, and I just want to ask you, because you started the conversation off with, we're going to throw this out in the Senate. Please tell me that you are going to hold an impeachment trial and expose all of this stuff in the Senate, won't you?
We will have a trial in the Senate. Unlike the House, where there was no due process and no fairness, I believe the Senate will be much more fair. We'll allow both sides to present the case. So the House managers can present their arguments, but we're going to allow the White House and the president to present their defense. I believe that means if the president wants to call witnesses, the president should be able to call witnesses. If the president wants to call Hunter Biden or the whistleblower, whomever the president wants to call, we should allow both sides to present their case. And then on the facts, this is going to be thrown out because the Democrats have they're abusing the Constitution. Not only have they not proven an impeachable offense, they know it, and they're just abusing the Constitution for partisan ends.
Great to talk to you, Ted. Thank you so much. Senator Ted Cruz. You can follow him at cruz.senate.gov. Thank you for clearing that last one out. I was afraid they were going to throw it out. I'm glad to hear that Ted is saying they're going to have a trial, and they should call the whistleblower and Chalupa and everyone else involved, because I think it destroys the DNC.